Co-op, Get Out Alive, All or Nothing. These are all different titles this movie could have gone under if it wanted to have a chance with succeeding with the horror community. But for any fans of the video game, you might be disappointed in what this turned out to be. But the good news is if you have never played the game and you have no idea what Until Dawn is about, you might actually really have a good time with this movie. It's all gonna make sense in a moment. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily, or La Movie Mija. I'm a part-time filmmaker, full-time movie lover, and today I'm giving you my review of Until Dawn, the movie. Please excuse my very bare surroundings. I don't have my usual cozy little setup because I'm traveling, but I really needed to take the time to make this video for you because, like every other fan of the video game Until Dawn, you've probably been wondering, what is this movie? What is the point? Is it really an adaptation of the video game? Well, if you saw that first trailer, then you know that the answer is no. This is not an adaptation of the video game in the slightest. I really don't know why they wanted to take that title and apply it to this story because there's not a lot of crossover at all. And so I got really heated after watching that first trailer, but I had the opportunity to go see the movie, so I said, why not? And I went in with my fists up, ready to fight, ready to come out really angry, but I gotta tell you, I had a good time. But the questions of, is this an Until Dawn movie? Is this movie any good? And does Emily like this movie? Are all very different questions. Starting with, is this movie any good? As always, this video will have a spoiler-free and a spoiler section with all the chapters laid out for you. And before we get into it, let me remind you to please like and subscribe to my channel. You can get one new movie review from me every single week. Some of my favorite reviews that I've posted this year include Companion and Sinners, so make sure you check those out on my channel. All right, let's get into it. 1 year after her sister disappeared, Clover and her friends head to the remote valley where she vanished to search for answers. Exploring an abandoned visitor center, they soon encounter a masked killer who murders them one by one. However, when they mysteriously wake up at the beginning of the same night, they're forced to relive the terror over and over and over again. The film is directed by David F. Sandberg, and it stars Rubin, Odessa Azion, Yoon, Belmont Cameli, Michael Cimino, Maia and Peter Stormare. For fans of the video game, Peter Stormare is probably the last bit of the connective tissue that you're going to see between the video game and the movie. Yes, there are some Easter eggs laid throughout the film, but really, it's not much. In interviews with writer-director team David F. Sandberg and Gary Dauberman, the main reason why they cite not wanting to just adapt the story from the video game, the beloved video game, to the big screen is that they thought it would be boring. Boring for the fans of the game, boring for themselves to just regurgitate the same characters and plot points and mechanics. So I find it very interesting that instead of adapting the video game in which this movie gets its name from, it then pulls inspiration from movies like Palm Springs, Happy Death Day, Evil Dead, Cabin in the Woods. That's right, this movie is a smorgasbord of other horror movies or other time travel movies, all in the name of not wanting to adapt something that's already established because it would be boring. There are elements about the experience about watching this movie that I think are in the spirit of the video game Until Dawn, but no, the very quick answer to is this an adaptation of the game? I wouldn't say so. And I think that's a big misfire. For me, I really don't like when people take the names of something that's well established just so that it can be marketed to the right people and it can sell. Box offices are still way underperforming where they were in 2019 pre-COVID pandemic. So I understand why we're trying all these different gimmicks. But when you have a writer-director pair like David F. Sandberg and Gary Dauberman who have established themselves as successful indie directors, they got their start making shorts on YouTube, including the infamous Lights Out. That one is terrifying. Absolutely recommend you watch it. Probably not too close to bedtime, but if you're a freak, you might like that. And that film got adapted into the feature-length film Lights Out. And they've since worked together on other things like Annabelle Creation, and they have a clear passion for horror and practical effects. Like, we'll talk about that when I get into the movie review itself, but it's interesting how you would take those two really great elements in this really great game and put them together, but give us something that's not true to anything. On the flip side, I can respect their decision to not want to one-to-one adapt the video game story to the big screen, because then people might like this movie and say, hey, I want to try that video game. So it's not totally replacing the experience of playing the video game. So in that regard, I can respect that decision. But now let's talk about, is this movie any good? Okay, now Emily, at the beginning, it seems like you kind of like this movie, so let's talk about that part. Let's talk about this movie as a movie. So this movie as a standalone piece, let's forget for a second that it's called Until Dawn. Once you get get past the first 15 to 20 minutes of this movie, I say this movie absolutely rocks. The setup for the movie is so dull. I was writhing in my chair. I was really starting to worry, like, oh no, this movie is going to be capital B bad, because a lot of just real stale tropes being set up. You have dead parent, missing sister, exes on a trip together, some tension with the friends, like all these things contributing to the setup of why they're in the woods to start with. They just didn't really work for me. Like those first 15-20 minutes could absolutely be cut. They really don't serve much to tell us a lot about the story besides the initial setup, but we get a lot of that in the character exploration later on in the film. And I think as the film went on, I started to like it even more. And all of that is in large part due to the fact that it is reminiscing on all of these other well-known horror movies, especially Cabin in the Woods, especially Evil Dead. This movie does a great job of keeping you on your toes, and it is really fun to see the different way that those elements all come into play. Since they did away with the mechanics of the video game, which, the implications of the choices that you make later affect how the video game ends for you. You can't really do that in a cinematic setting unless you're doing something like Netflix did with that one Black Mirror special episode. Because they're doing away with that, their new mechanic that they're operating with is the return to the same night over and over and over again. And as they return every single night, there's new horrific elements that pop up that keep them on their toes, you as an audience member on your toes. And if you are a fan of horror movies, you're gonna really eat up everything they have to offer you. This is where the movie reveals itself to be a lot more self-aware, a lot more silly. The characters have a lot more of a compelling dynamic as the movie goes on. And the hero of this movie are the practical effects. Like I mentioned before, the writer-director duo have a clear-cut passion for horror movies, and that is in its most obvious and its most glorious in the special effects. Without question, my favorite part of this movie are the practical effects and all the creative ways they found to kill off these characters. Like, it is so much fun seeing how all of it unfolds. You never know what to expect. It keeps you on your toes. Sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's zany, sometimes it's just flat out disgusting, but all of that just adds to the element of fun, especially watching it in a group setting. The special effects were incredible. I loved all the little ways that this movie felt so tactile and real, from the dirt to the goo to all the ways that you can definitely see that they plan things out ahead of time. And I saw some behind the scenes footage that David F. Sandberg, the director, posted on his own YouTube channel depicting how he went about thinking through these different effects. Like, there's a lot of thought and care that went into crafting these moments. And I can't tell you how much I really respect that, and I really admire their decision to just go balls to the wall with the practical effects, because as a producer, I am constantly being challenged with the offer of AI as a cost-saving mechanism, as a way to eliminate people's jobs, as a way to reduce the amount of time and care that we spent on art, because we can just throw some words into a prompt and it'll spit out some things for us. And no, I don't think AI and CGI are synonymous, and I don't think David F. Sandberg has anything against CG. Like, there's definitely some CG in this film. They have to use it in some elements to kind of like accelerate these practical effects, or to help, bring some things that are totally outlandish to life. But as a filmmaker and someone who enjoys horror movies, especially because there is that handmade element to them that make them feel so personal, that make them feel like there was a lot of grit and dedication and just so much heart that goes into the making of them, that gets me excited. Just had to take a moment to celebrate the fact of how much effort that was put into all the pre-planning, the forethought that went into the practical effects implementation and the making of this movie, because it doesn't just happen. We can see bad effects coming from a mile away, and that's usually due to poor planning. It's not usually just because people don't have money. It's because they didn't have the forethought to think about how they were going to tackle this in a cost-effective way. So the amount of effort and creativity that went into those practical effects really came together so nicely in this movie. They sell the horror, they sell the fun, and it makes it for a wholly unique experience in today's modern horror landscape. And kudos to the entire cast in this movie. I thought they had great chemistry together. There was a lot of levity between them. I really enjoyed their character arcs and how they were portrayed, minus the first 20 minutes or so. But as the movie ramps up and we go through all the different nights with them, you can tell just how game these actors were to take on these stunts and these practical effects, and that just added to the fun. The best way I can equate the feeling of watching this movie is it felt like I was going through an escape room with my friends. My friends being the people I was in the audience with, and the escape room being all the new challenges we were presented with as the movie goes on. So do I think this movie is any good? Kind of. The fact is that it is adapted from a video game story that is so well acted. There's an incredible amount of love and care that went into those characters and that setup of the story. There is some incredible lore that is established in the world of Until Dawn in the video game, that it's sad that a lot of that is gone to the wayside for its adaptation for the big screen. And because of that big gap of the lore, the characters, the emotional payoff that you get watching these people try to survive the night is all missing, it kind of takes away from that experience, and it kind of is a slap in the face for anybody who is a fan of the video game. My caveat to all of that is this movie is still somehow a whole lot of fun. So if you're a fan of the game, you might go in wanting something and getting something completely different, wanting to be mad about it. But if you're a fan of horror movies, you might still find yourself giggling, laughing, and having a good time anyway. So that concludes the spoiler-free section of this video. From now on, there will be spoilers, so you have been warned. Big spoilers ahead. Do not watch unless you want this movie to be ruined for you. Now, the thing I couldn't talk about in the spoiler-free section was the ending of the film, because what really got me about the ending of the film is just how wholesome it felt in connection with the spirit of the video game. As much as I gripe about this film not being anything like the video game, I think that there's a lot of the spirit, the essence, the whispers of Until Dawn the game that end up in the final product. And one of them being the fact that everybody in the movie survives in the end. So hear me out. I feel like one of the key aspects of the, emotional experience you get from playing Until Dawn, the video game, is the idea that your choices have effects and consequences on the people around you. And because you're playing through different perspectives throughout the video game, you have this experiment in empathy, and you get to see things from other people's point of views, and you get to experience what it's like to be in their shoes during this one horrific night. Now, this movie doesn't take the opportunity to switch perspectives in an effort to build empathy across the different characters, but it does stick to its guns in trying to get them all to survive the night together. And I really thought that was sweet. It builds on the theme of the importance of community, sticking together, those emotional ties between the friends, even though they were kind of flimsy in the beginning, they felt kind of stale. They definitely grew throughout the film, and I really liked where we got to in the end. And something that felt like there was hints of this, and I think maybe I could be reaching, or sometimes I just read too much into things, but I liked the idea of the themes tying grief and gameplay together. The use of the gameplay mechanics of starting the night over and over again could be seen as a metaphor for staying in grief. And that's where Clover is at the beginning of the movie. She is stuck in her grief. She's trying to retrace her sister's steps and trying to relive the past in order to see a future with her family, but she is not processing her grief properly, and her friends are kind of engaging her in this kind of arrested development as she's dealing with the loss of her mother, the loss of her sister. And so this idea of the metaphor of having to play the game, having to progress in the game and move forward and uncover different parts of the map and explore the things that terrify you as a metaphor for how you have to go on with your life, even though things are really hard and things are really scary. But leaning on your friends and your community to do that and keeping going no matter what is a beautiful way to bring those themes together. So I already talked about the practical effects earlier on, but I can't tell you enough how much it tickled me seeing them blow up in the bathroom scene when they're just thinking that they're gonna wait out the night in the bathroom together and they'll be just fine. The moment that one character started drinking water, and I knew it was a bad choice. You never hydrate in a horror situation, right? The dehydration will keep you focused. I'm kidding. But the moment that water was introduced to the scene, I was skeptical, and I still couldn't see that coming. The way they executed those kills in that sequence was the idea that not only you're going to spontaneously combust because you drink some water, but because depending on the amount of water, it's going to impact the amount that you combust. It is diabolical. It is so disgusting, and it was so cool to see them play it out. I almost was upset in the film when they revealed that they had actually been there so many more nights than we thought, and I was like, oh no, we didn't get to see all the other nights and all the different things that killed them. But we then go into the phone of one of the characters. Wait, I can't remember his name. What's his name? Abel. We go into Abel's phone and see all of the video evidence that he had of the different nights that went down and all the different horrific things that they experienced, including the worm in the face. That was disgusting. And to see the behind the scenes of how it was an actual mechanized worm on her face, it kind of makes it worse. Like if it were CGI, I feel like I would feel better. But knowing that was still something on her face, ooh. The last thing I want to point out, and I'm not sure if this is a good or bad thing, but the truth is they eliminated the indigenous source material from the story in the adaptation for the movie. In the video game, we get some clear sightings that the Wendigo is derived from indigenous culture, and we don't get any mentions of that in the movie adaptation, and I thought that was interesting. And I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing per se, because sometimes representation for representation's sake can be very sloppy, it can be very mishandled, and I'm not one for sloppy representation or anything that harms a community or perpetuates incorrect stereotypes. So maybe it would have been out of place for them to give us a culturally accurate depiction of a Wendigo and where it comes from and what it represents in this movie that's more of like a teen campy slasher or something. So maybe you can make that argument. But I mean, it's also a missed opportunity for them to give credit where credit's due. And if you're going to pull something like a Wendigo from indigenous cultures and communities and you're not even going to mention that's where it's from or even hint at like its origin, that feels like a missed opportunity to me. But if you watch the movie and you feel like maybe this movie didn't need to dive into the lore and overall was just kind of skating past Until Dawn and didn't really like dive into it anyway to justify going into the backstory of a Wendigo, then maybe it's just me. Okay, that is everything I thought about the new Until Dawn movie. I think you should watch this in theaters if you can, if you're up for a campy, good slasher time. But if not, definitely a movie that you can skip and you won't be mad about it. But again, kudos to everyone on the practical effects team for this movie, including the director, David F. Sandberg, who had the vision to bring all of these disgusting bits to life. I had so much fun watching it all unfold. Let me know if you check out Until Dawn, and I'll see you next time. Bye!